Is North Carolina a dangerous state to live in? No, it's not. However, like most states, there are some dangerous cities. So I'm gonna go ahead and count back the top 10 most dangerous cities in North Carolina. Now, stay to the very end because as always, I talk about Charlotte, and I'm gonna share with you the top 2 most dangerous suburbs around Charlotte. You'll be quite surprised. Now, if you're looking for everything Charlotte, North Carolina, the good, the bad, everything in between, including South Carolina, you have come to the right channel. So be sure to go ahead and like and subscribe. And if you want to stay on top of every single video I post, make sure to hit that notification button and we'll get you notified every time I drop a video. Now, I truly do get calls, texts, and emails every single day from people just like you who are looking to move to the Charlotte, North Carolina, and South Carolina area. So if that's you, whether it's 9 days or 90 days from now, whether you're moving across the country, across the world, or just across town, be sure to give me a call, a text, an email, even set up a Zoom meeting, and I would love to make your move exactly what you want it to be. So, is North Carolina dangerous? Well, we've already determined that the entire state is not dangerous. However, there are some dangerous cities, and I'm gonna list out the top 10 for you and why they're the most dangerous. Now, as you know, I always like to talk about the positivity in some of these things, and while as a whole, some of these cities are coming up as dangerous, the nice part is there are still some beautiful areas in and around these cities that truly have low crime rates, have been regentrified, and are absolutely gorgeous. So if you're looking to move near or in one of these cities, there is still a silver lining, just like people that still live in LA and New York. But that's another story. So let's dive in. The top 10, or the number 10 on the list, is Durham, North Carolina. Now, with a total population of 297,000 people, the crime rate is 4,500 out of every 100,000 people. Now, what does that actually translate to? The possibility of you being involved in a violent crime is 1 in 115. Now, those are pretty good odds, of course, and here's the thing. It depends upon what parts of Durham that you're in. Now, I'm sure as you took a drive through Durham maybe 15 years ago, it looked very different. I myself, which if you've heard anything about my story, I actually did live in Raleigh for 6 years while going to NC State. Go Pack! And while living there, you would never go to Durham. Durham was not an area you wanted to go. Now, while there were people that went to Duke University that was out there, outside of that, it really wasn't a place you wanted to hang out. Over the last 20 years, Durham has made a major stride in turning over its city. And you can see that as you drive through the downtown areas. But once again, like most cities, there are still those areas you probably don't want to go into from a safety perspective. Now, when we're talking about this, it's the areas that pop up as a little bit more when it comes to violent crimes or theft and things of that nature. So, do I think Durham is still a likely place you'd want to live? Absolutely. It's a big city. But make sure you pick an area that suits you and your desires when it comes to crime rates. So for number 9, we are hopping into a town that you probably would have never expected, Henderson, North Carolina. Now, for those of you who are saying, where is Henderson, North Carolina? Well, that's kind of the key piece why this is kind of a shocker on the list. The actual population of Henderson is only 15,000 people. I know, coming from us talking about Durham with over 200, we're talking about 15,000 people. Now, why is this a big deal? Well, there were over 303 violent crimes in the last year in Henderson, North Carolina, and when you really look at that ratio with only 15,000 people, that's a lot of crime. In fact, your chance of being involved in a violent crime in Henderson is 1 in 50. That is a huge number. And honestly, not exactly something that I want to face when walking down the street. Now, while not all small towns in North Carolina have rates like this, and most of them don't, this one is certainly an outlier. On top of that, you also have burglary and theft. Over 855 cases were reported last year. Number 8, Fayetteville, North Carolina. Now, if you're local, it's Fayetteville. Fayetteville, you just have to kind of roll it off the tongue. Or for those of you who are in the military or are a family of people in the military, you'll notice Vietnam. the home of Fort Bragg, which was recently renamed to Liberty. When we're talking about Fayetteville, North Carolina, there's a few things to think about. One, it's the home to Fort Bragg. Now, Fort Bragg is also home to the 82nd Airborne Division. Thank you to our men and women, service members who work in and around the Fayetteville area in Fort Bragg. And here's the thing. Part of the challenges with towns like this is there's a lot of people coming and going. And sadly, they usually do have higher violent crime rates. Now, the nice thing about Fayetteville is, like I said, there's always a positive. There's some beautiful towns and communities around the Fayetteville area, such as Hope Mills and other such towns. But in Fayetteville, let's talk about the actual crime rates. In 2022, there were 2,065 violent crimes reported. That is a very heavy number for a town like Fayetteville. And a second thing I want to know, there were over 7,200 property crimes. That could be breaking and entering, theft, or even automobile theft. Now here is an interesting fact, however. When we were just talking about the previous town, we said it was 1 in 50. Well, guess what? Fayetteville, your possibility for being involved in a violent crime is actually lower. 1 in 100, which is a much better number than that teeny little town of 15,000. This particular town faces challenges such as murder, crime, theft, as well as even automobile incidents. So if you're looking to move to a town, Fayetteville might not be the one for you. Check out a little bit further south into Hope Mills, which is a really beautiful, thriving community, and it's actually quite beautiful. Number 7 on our list is Greensboro, North Carolina. Now, you may have heard of Greensboro, you might not have heard of Greensboro. In fact, it's got a very similar population size to Durham, North Carolina. Total population is almost 300,000 people, which is quite substantial. But here's the thing, with so many people in a high population, you'd think that maybe there would be less possibility of you being involved in a violent crime. Not so much, not in this town. That's right, 1 out of 23. What does that mean? Your chances of being involved in a violent crime are 1 in 23. Now, there were over 2,700 violent crimes reported and over 10,000 property crimes reported just last year. Here's another key statistic. Greensboro is actually slated, or should I say the statistics show, it's 71% more dangerous than the national average. So is this a town for you? Personally, I would not live there, but I also cannot find anything when it comes to Greensboro that would draw me to it as a positive. Most of it is a much older style city. It really hasn't been brought up to it, I would say, the 2020s. Now, what do I mean by that? In many of the other towns and cities in North Carolina, you've seen that things have moved and changed, such as the town of Kannapolis, which probably could have been on this list many years ago, but instead they've put money into the town, they've rejuvenated it, they've made sure to make alliances with the other major cities surrounding it, so that there's actually a flow of an economy growing and more. When it comes to Greensboro, they just haven't done that. It just seems, in my personal opinion, it's a very stale and stagnant town, and I haven't seen life get pumped back into it, but I would love to see that happen because I do think it has potential. Next up on the list, number 6, Whiteville, North Carolina. Now, while you probably haven't ever heard of this town, it's because it only has about 5,000 people that live there. But here's one of the key statistics. Your chance of being involved in a violent crime is 1 in 6. 1 in 6, that's insane. Think about that. That means you have pretty good odds of being involved in a violent crime at some point while you're living there. So, what are some of the other statistics when it comes to Whiteville? One of the biggest things are property crime, with the property crime at 107 out of 1,000 people. That is staggering, absolutely mind-boggling. So, just don't go to Whiteville. Number 5 on our list. This one hits a little bit closer to home, being we're here all about Charlotte, right? Well, Gastonia, North Carolina makes the list. Now, while Gastonia has made huge strides to change and, I would say, morph into a much better city and town, there are still some pockets of Gastonia, which is more of the downtown area, that just hasn't quite made the turn. And in fact, the crime statistics are still high. Now, the interesting fact about this is if you take a trip or a drive and take a look at the southeast area of Gastonia, because it's quite a large city, it's actually a beautiful part of the town and the crime rates are very low. Now, I do have some links in the description below. You can take a look at niche.com and see what that actually looks like. but most of the crime is actually right around I-85 where it intersects. This is kind of common with a lot of towns across the country when they're intersecting an interstate. So let's talk about what the stats are for Gastonia. Now the total population is 81,000 people. Being it is set a little ways outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, that does make sense. The crime rate is 48 out of 1,000 people. Now, what does this equate to? Well, your chance of being involved in a violent crime is 1 in 21. Now, it sounds a little bit better being there is far larger population versus a town like Whiteville that has 5,000. So keep that in mind. There were 726 violent crimes reported, which were predominantly in that northwestern section of Gastonia that flanks I-85. And there were a little over 3,000 property crimes that were also reported in the last year. So is Gastonia a terrible place to live? Personally, I don't think so, but I do say that there are specific areas you should probably look into a little bit more and make sure those crime rates make sense. If you're looking for much lower crime rates, decent schools, and actually a really pretty area, we could also get some land. That's right, usually you can find some homes with an acre of land or more. Take a look at that southeast section of Gastonia that flanks Cramerton and Belmont, another beautiful city just outside of Charlotte on the Catawba River. Number 4 on our list is Rockingham, North Carolina. Now the population of Rockingham is another small town with a total population of 9,000 people. While there was no data given as to how possible it could be for you to be involved in a violent crime, there were 66 violent crimes last year and 410 property crimes, such as theft and things of that nature. So for such a small town, it definitely has a pretty decently high crime rate. The actual crime rate itself is rated at 5,500, which is 110% higher than the state average. So keep that in mind. Number 3 on our list is Reidsville, North Carolina. You probably never heard of it. It's a population of about 14,000 people, and yet, like some of these other small towns, it's got a pretty high crime rate. The crime rate is 56 out of every 1,000 people, which is a decent crime rate when we're talking about this list. And your possibility of being involved in one of those violent crimes is 1 in 17. So how much higher is this than the state average? 124% higher than the state average. So I think you're getting a clear picture that it's not really the state, it's just a couple of these towns, which hopefully everybody that's bad just keeps getting attracted to them and keep all the other towns so much nicer. So let's look at number 2 on our list, Albemarle. Now Albemarle sits way outside of Charlotte over on the east space over there. You just go way out east, past Locust, all the way out, and you hit Albemarle. Now this is also a very small town, population of 16,000 people. Now, a few things to note about Albemarle. The crime rates and where this is coming from is in the smaller downtown area. In fact, in most cities across the country, you're going to find your highest volume of crime in the downtown or more densely populated areas. One thing to note about Albemarle, it's actually quite rural for the rest of the town, which is quite sprawling. So keep that in mind when you're really looking. If you are seeing a home or a property that's in Albemarle, don't get scared. Just make sure it's on the outskirts and not right in downtown if you want to avoid higher crime rates. In fact, go ahead and go down below. You'll go ahead and see a link that I have that you can take a look at what the actual crime rates are so you can be confident in where you're going. That possibility of being involved in one of these violent crimes is 1 in 16, and it ranks at 150% higher than the state average when it comes to violent crimes. So I'm sure you've all been waiting for it. The number 1. What is the worst town, the most dangerous town in North Carolina? Lumberton. Lumberton, North Carolina sits about 45 minutes out of Fayetteville, North Carolina, depending upon where you are in each of those towns. Lumberton is named after the Lumbee Indians, which was the predominant Indian tribe in that area way back when. I do love that we were able to name a town after that tribe. The challenge with that is the name right now does not do that tribe justice. See, Lumberton is the number 1 most dangerous town in North Carolina. With a population of just 19,000 people, their crime rate is actually 435% higher than the North Carolina average. I'm gonna say that again, 435% higher than the North Carolina average. What in the world is going on in this town? Well, let's talk about some of the stats. The property crime rate is 122 per 1,000 people. The violent crime rate is 20 per 1,000 people. And your possibility of being involved in a violent crime is 1 in 27. So why is it so high? Well, you might be surprised to guess this, but there is a horrible drug problem in Lumberton. That's right, a lot of this stems from drug activity, drug involvement, you name it, Lumberton's got it. It's definitely not a city that I would ever want to, I would say, live in, stop by, stop in, and in fact, when we're headed out to the beach, we usually make sure we pass right on through because we don't even want to go to the gas station. So I can go ahead and tell you with certainty, you can skip that town on your next road trip. In fact, you could probably skip some of these towns on your next road trip. But aside from Lumberton, I think most of the towns on this list, as I've noted, have some beautiful areas that are worthwhile checking out, and understand that the crime is really isolated to certain spots. So, like I promised, I'm gonna share with you the most dangerous neighborhoods. I know I said towns, but I'm gonna give you the most dangerous neighborhoods in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, I would say that most of Charlotte is actually very safe. In fact, I have never had an issue in Charlotte, and it's very rare to have any kinds of issue when it comes to crime. However, there are always dangerous parts. So here's your top 2, statistically, most dangerous neighborhoods in Charlotte, North Carolina. Number 1, Pinecrest. Pinecrest has 529% higher crime rate than the rest of Charlotte. And number 2, Lincoln Heights. Lincoln Heights has 450% higher crime rate than the rest of Charlotte. I'll be sure to go ahead and post these links down below so you can take a look at where you might want to call home. But here's the thing. As a whole, North Carolina has some absolutely amazing towns and cities. There's always pros and cons to every town and city, and this is no different. But for the majority, you're going to be in a beautiful, safe environment. And I just had to point out, because I get the question all the time, where not to go or where is most dangerous. Here it is. Right here, you heard it from me, and you've got the links below to check it out yourself. So whether it's 9 days or 90 days, you're moving across the country or just across town, I would love to help you. Shoot me a call, a text, an email, schedule a Zoom call. I want to make sure you have all the information you need to make your decision on where you want to live and make your move exactly what you want it to be. So until next time, I look forward to showing you around town.